So, second question, how can you tell who or what is or isn't a person? So, there are three kinds of people in zombie films that I'd like to point to here. In the voodoo zombie films, you have, again, this idea of a zombie with a person inside of it. And you know, a great example here is I Walked with a Zombie. There's a figure in there. The image I showed the first time I mentioned voodoo zombies had the man holding the woman. He's a very tall African-American man. Well, I guess he's just African-Caribbean. He's from Haiti. And he is a character in the film with almost no persona, right? He acts. It's not entirely clear whether he's acting his own volition or not, but he seems to be a character. We give him a personality even though he doesn't. It's not clear whether he has one or not. And we start to wonder whether he's a person. What motive does he have? Especially at the end where he seems to be out of control, right? With regard to Invasion of the Body Snatchers, of course, you have this question of, is that new being still the person I know? They have all of the memories. They can talk to me about all of the same things. Their emotion is gone, but at their core, how much of them is them? Is it a sliding scale or is there a clear line? And finally, in the Hollywood zombies, we're seeing more and more films that create an ambiguity about what the zombie is. But interestingly, Romero has always had that ambiguity, in part by creating scenes that make you empathetic for the zombies. Right? In the original Night of the Living Dead, there's a couple scenes where these sort of herds of rednecks are out hunting the zombies, and they've made it into a sort of hilarious sport. They're having fun, they're drinking beers, they're having a barbecue. He makes this scene again in the original Dawn of the Dead. And then by Day of the Dead, he actually has a zombie that can remember things. The zombie actually gets a name, it's Bub. He is a character in the film. He remembers what a toothbrush is for. He flips through a book. He can't read it, but he knows how books work. He actually loads a gun and starts firing it at one point. There's this idea that maybe at its core, the zombie still has some memory. Well, as soon as you're willing to acknowledge that, the entire ethical landscape about what you can do to a zombie changes. If you're willing to acknowledge that at some level, the zombie is still partly human, well, it's a whole different ballgame. So zombies were people too. I'd like to show a clip from another great zombie film. This is Fido. Fido is the heartwarming tale of a boy and his zombie. It's sort of a parody of Lassie, only the zombie is kind of a Lassie figure. In this world, the zombie war is over, and the zombies have been captured and corralled using these collars, that when the collar is on, the zombie is not aggressive. It has to follow orders. It's like a voodoo zombie. Of course, the collars get broken at various points, and that's where the fun comes in. But there's a dynamic in which the zombie becomes a figure in the household, and it becomes a tension. So we're going to watch a scene. The last bit of information I guess you need to know is that the father in this family was so traumatized by the zombie war that he's obsessed with really dying. And so he has funeral insurance for the whole family, because that's the only way you get to not be reanimated. Otherwise, when you die, you reanimate, and then they use your body for service manual labor as part of the new regime. So that's what's going on here.
They seem foolish to be dead, and they're passing away was marked affliction, and they're going forth from us utter destruction. But they are in peace. For if before men indeed they be punished, yet was there...
Is that zombie wearing my suit?
What would you suggest, Bill, that I buy the new one?
Well, why didn't you leave him the way it was?
The way he was dressed. Come on, Bill.
Head coffin, please.
So you permanently kill one by severing the head, so they bury the head separately.
Head coffin. This guy's not coming back. You can bet on that.
Look, this is the best part.
Emmett Mitchell, from dust have you come, and to dust shall you return, and from dust shall you not
be resurrected.
So, if a person dies and becomes a zombie, then they're not really dead.
No, not really. Well, it's like being in purgatory before going to heaven.
zombies too? Even when they kill?
Well, I think zombies kill because it's their nature.
So then it's not their fault.
Well, not really.
What are you so happy about?
I was just going to tell you something.
You know what Herman the Gravedigger just told
Bill,
me?
Timmy was just...
Only 10% of people get funerals. Most become zombies. Can you believe that?
Well, they are expensive.
I'd rather be a zombie than dead.
Whoa, whoa, whoa. Hold on there.
Timmy is making observations about the world. I think it's healthy.
Observation about the world. He's a kid. What does he know?
He knows a lot. At least he's not obsessed with funerals.
Better than focusing on walking corpses who should be buried without their heads. Hey, we're all getting funerals. All three of us.
Bill, get your own funeral. Timmy and I are going zombie.
All right. There's a great scene I really wanted to show there that I didn't, where to make him jealous, she dances with the zombie. That's great. So in Fido, we start to see that the zombies have remnants of memory, right? This zombie at various times we see he can understand when someone's mad at him and he'll growl back. He actually, unlike most zombies, has some self-control when his collar comes off, right? So there is a scene where he shows up and the boy is in trouble. She says, "Where's Timmy?" And the zombie gets her to follow him. It's very much straight out of Lassie. If you haven't ever seen Lassie, go watch Lassie. Okay. So, I would say that these tales encourage us to think about different things, right? But as soon as we start to think about the idea that this thing we have marked as non-human might actually be human, this dives into a whole realm of human conversation about how we understand our place in the world, right? The historical construct about what it means to be human, despite the fact that at first we're like, of course we know what it means to be human, has been shifting, right? I mean, even just in the history of America, for a long time, various groups have not been marked as fully part of society, right? I mean, our Constitution marked the African slaves who had been kidnapped and brought here as not fully human. They actually didn't even count as a person in the vote, right? I mean, more recently, women got the vote. Right now, there's a huge argument in the country about whether same-sex couples should have the same rights as straight couples in terms of marriage and other mostly financial issues, but right? This is all part of the same conversation in which we define the lines about who gets to be a person, right? Because if you're saying, I get something that you don't by the nature of your being different from me, that is drawing a line about personness, rights. So I think that a zombie film that challenges us to think about things in this way really is asking us to think about crucial issues that are still at play today. And that's part of what I like about them. So I think I've got, this leads me to the best part of the talk, perhaps. Maybe for me, you zombie fans, it depends how wide your fanship goes. Okay, so this last bit, right, it challenges our conception about ethics for non-humans, right? And on one hand, thinking about the zombie as something other than a nonstop killing machine with no mental state at all, right? Thinking about it as a being that used to be human, that might have some humanness. It challenges the assumption that's at the core of most zombie movies, which is that it's okay to kill any zombie you see anytime you want for any reason, and that you should. And if it's fun to hack off their arms and have a race with them, you could do that too, right? I mean, there are movies that explore this idea that human beings would treat zombies badly because we can. And most of those movies are taking a dim view of that. They're suggesting there's something inhumane in that, right? But as soon as we start to acknowledge that there may be some inner life in the zombie, that becomes especially frightening, that we would not accord any rights to the being. Now here's where this gets, I think, interesting and into a side. I've sort of presented this a little bit in the context of my class, so this is a pedagogical thing that I do. It happens in any class I'm teaching where I come across a big idea, as Andrew would call it, that's not directly germane, but I think interesting and worthwhile. I will do what I call a nerd aside. I will tell the students I'm doing this. I will say, this is for your edification. It's not part of a quiz, but You're going to love it. And then I will talk about something that's related but not entirely germane. So, zombies and robots. Right? I'm really interested in the nature of artificial intelligence as it relates to the zombie question, because they're closely related as far as I'm concerned. Right? An early robot, if you want to call it that, in science fiction would be Frankenstein. A lot of scholars, when they're talking about the creatures that come before zombies that are kind of grandparents of zombies, will talk about Frankenstein or the golem as one example of a kind of mindless monster. Frankenstein particularly because his monster is undead, right? It is very close to a zombie. It's actually like Danny because it can kill and it can reason and talk and everything. But then we also have Rostam's Universal Robots, or RUR. This is the play from 1920 that originated the term robot. And in this play, we have all of the things that we would later see time and time again in any movie about artificial intelligence or robots, which is that we create these mechanical men, we tell them to do stuff, we boss them around, and it turns out they don't like that very much. That's at the core of this play and every movie or tale about robots since, right? 2001: A Space Odyssey. The question, one of the questions at the heart of the film is, how alive is Hal? Because if he's just computer bits, that scene where he's singing, if you haven't seen 2001, there's a scene where they're shutting Hal down, sorry to spoil it for you, and he starts singing a song from early in his life, from when he was being taught to be a being. He starts singing Daisy, right? Daisy, Daisy, give me your answer true. It is a moving scene that should not be moving for this murderous robot to be being turned off. But it really is, and it makes you think about what is the nature of life? How do we define where those borders are? Right? Blade Runner tackles this same issue. Right? Blade Runner is about robots who are so realistic, the only way to tell that they're robots is to use this elaborate machine that scans them, and they answer hundreds of questions, and their emotional response will be wrong. And you'll be able to tell that they're machines, and you can murder them because they're machines. But they don't even feel that they're machines. They might know, but they feel alive. So how can we say they're not alive? I find this question really intriguing. Even Terminator 2, right? When Arnold gives that thumbs up at the end, that is a signal of a sort of sentience that is outside of the, if you don't remember the film, it's how he signals like, I did this for you as he's going away. It is a signal of the intelligence, the sentience of the creature, and it complicates what we could think about this robot. Right? And finally, Spielberg's AI, which is built on Stanley Kubrick's work, very specifically, is again a complication of this question of how do we know what alive is? Now, I said that I would think about this or bring this up in the context of real-world issues. Right? On one hand, okay, whatever. Fine. Science fiction talks about this. On the other hand, our ability to produce high-end computational programs is getting more elaborate every year. I would be very surprised if within my lifetime we don't see computer programs that are so complex and so versatile in the way that they react that it is impossible or near impossible to say that they don't react just like a person would. Right? This is the heart of the Turing question. There's another guy named John Searle who deals with this. There's a lot of philosophers who have talked about this a little bit, but how can we, at what point can we say, absolutely not, anything we make is definitely not alive? I mean, from the religious perspective, right, there is this question of the soul. If we have this idea of carrying some sort of supernatural soul within ourselves that imbues us with sentience, then that's a line that we can point to. But as science advances, we need to think about how do we justify that line in light of greater and greater advances along these lines. And then, I mentioned also posthumanism. There's a whole strain of people who I think are a little ambitious about how soon this will happen, who think that pretty soon we'll be able to scan our brains and upload ourselves into a computer, which raises a whole other basket of questions, right? Do you have any rights if you get uploaded as a computer program? I would hate to think that we have to answer those today, but it would be equally scary if we start uploading people before we answer those questions.